Number 5. The missing Roanoke Colony. The vanishing of the Roanoke Colony is the oldest and most famous unsolved mystery in American history. In 1587, over 100 English men, women, and children settled on Roanoke Island, located off the coast of modern-day North Carolina, attempting to establish the first permanent English settlement in the New World. Faced with a severe lack of supplies and escalating tensions with local Native American tribes, the colony's governor, John White, sailed back to England to request urgent assistance. However, his return was delayed by the outbreak of the Anglo-Spanish War. When White finally managed to return to Roanoke 3 long years later in 1590, he found the entire settlement completely abandoned and dismantled. The houses had been carefully taken down, indicating they had not left in a panic. The only clue to their whereabouts was the word Croton carved into a wooden post, and the letters CRO carved into a nearby tree. This seemingly pointed to the nearby Croton Island, home to a friendly Native American tribe. However, a massive storm prevented White from searching the island, and he was forced to return to England. To this day, despite centuries of intense archaeological digs, DNA testing of local populations, and endless historical debate, the ultimate fate of the 115 colonists remains entirely unknown, lost to the dense mists of early American history. Number 4. The Servant Girl Annihilator. Decades before Jack the Ripper terrorized the streets of London, a brutal and sadistic serial killer stalked the capital of Texas. Between 1884 and 1885, the city of Austin was gripped by panic as an unknown murderer, later dubbed the Servant Girl Annihilator, committed a series of incredibly violent nocturnal attacks. The killer primarily targeted young African American domestic servants, dragging them from their beds in the middle of the night before brutally bludgeoning them with axes and mutilating their bodies. In an era before streetlights, the terrified citizens of Austin armed themselves and formed massive vigilante patrols, yet the killer moved through the pitch-black streets like a ghost. The panic reached a boiling point on Christmas Eve 1885, when the killer boldly changed his pattern, brutally murdering 2 white women from prominent Austin families. The sheer brutality of the crimes led the terrified city to construct the famous Moonlight Towers, massive, 165-foot-tall arc lamps designed to bathe the entire city in light. Just as suddenly as the murders began, they abruptly stopped. Despite hundreds of arrests and widespread speculation, the identity of America's first major serial killer has never been definitively solved. Number 3. The disappearance of Jimmy Hoffa. The sudden vanishing of James R. Hoffa, the incredibly powerful and fiercely controversial former president of the International Brotherhood of Teamsters, remains the most infamous missing person case in American history. On the afternoon of July 30, 1975, Hoffa was seen waiting outside the Machu's Red Fox restaurant in a suburb of Detroit, Michigan. He had arranged a meeting with 2 high-ranking mafia figures, Anthony Tony Jack Giacalone and Anthony Tony Pro Provenzano. Hoffa made a brief phone call to his wife, complaining that the men were late, and was never seen or heard from again. At the time of his disappearance, Hoffa was aggressively attempting to regain control of the Teamsters Union after serving time in federal prison for jury tampering and fraud. His relentless ambition had deeply alienated his former mob allies, who feared he would expose their massive embezzlement of the union's lucrative pension funds. The FBI launched an unprecedented investigation, aggressively interrogating mafia figures and tearing up concrete foundations across the Midwest. Countless theories regarding the location of his remains have become American folklore, ranging from being buried beneath the end zone of Giants Stadium to being incinerated in a massive mob-owned trash compactor. Despite being legally declared dead in 1982, the ultimate location of Jimmy Hoffa's body remains a closely guarded mafia secret that may never be revealed. Number 2. The Tara Calico Mystery. The terrifying mystery surrounding the disappearance of 19-year-old Tara Calico is defined by one of the most disturbing photographs ever discovered. On the morning of September 20, 1988, Tara left her home in Belen, New Mexico, for her daily bicycle ride along State Road 47. She never returned. Extensive searches of the route yielded only her shattered Walkman and a cassette tape, suggesting a violent struggle. A year later, a horrifying clue emerged nearly 1,500 miles away. A woman in Port St. Joe, Florida, found a Polaroid photograph lying in the parking lot of a convenience store. The chilling photo showed a teenage girl and a young boy bound, gagged with duct tape, and lying in the back of a windowless van. The girl bore a striking physical resemblance to Tara, including a faint scar on her leg, and a copy of the exact book Tara was known to be reading was visible next to the victims. Despite the FBI confirming the photo was authentic and undoctored, they could not definitively identify the people in the image. Although Scotland Yard's analysts believed it was Tara, the local sheriff heavily disputed the theory, believing instead that Tara was accidentally killed by local teenagers who panicked and disposed of her body. The true origin of the photograph and the final fate of Tara Calico remain a deeply haunting and unresolved nightmare. Number 1. The Villisca Axe Murders. The Villisca Axe murders stand as one of the most horrific and baffling unsolved mass murders in the history of the American Midwest. On the dark, quiet night of June 9, 1912, an unknown intruder entered the home of Josiah Moore in the small town of Villisca, Iowa. Using an axe belonging to Josiah, the killer systematically bludgeoned to death all 6 members of the Moore family, including their 4 young children, along with 2 neighborhood girls who were spending the night. The absolute brutality of the crime was staggering. The killer had struck their victims with such extreme force that the axe gouged the ceiling. Eerily, the murderer had meticulously covered all the mirrors and windows in the house with clothing and locked all the doors before vanishing into the night, completely unseen and unheard by anyone in the tightly knit community. The local police force was completely overwhelmed, and the crime scene was heavily contaminated by hundreds of curious onlookers who wandered through the house before the state investigators arrived.